The gay community in Long Beach in the 70s and 80s was undergoing a lot of gay bashing, a lot of crimes, assaults, and even murders. When I use the word gay community, it was the common word or phrase to use in the 1970s and 1980s, and it was inclusive. It was always meant to be inclusive, lesbians, bisexuals, transgender, and so on. So I'm not being rude by saying gay community, like I'm trying to exclude other people. That was just our common term. I moved here in 1975, and right away I heard about and saw things that were just awful. That's why I started the hate crime reporting hotline, so people can call and they can report crimes that happened. The reason why that's important is because the Long Beach Police Department in the 70s was not respecting of gay and lesbian rights. People might experience an assault or get beat up coming out of a bar usually, and they'd call the police and the police would not even take a report. And a new police chief came in, Lawrence Binkley. He and I hit it off perfectly. We liked each other and we worked together. The gay bashings that happened, I accumulated in a folder, and I remember the first year I did it, there were 42 complaints. And these were physical assaults or murders. He was shocked, and I was glad he was shocked because he was not getting the word we had a serious problem. I even gave talks to different gay and lesbian groups in Long Beach, talking about the violence, how to report it, how to try to avoid it, and never be alone when leaving a bar. I went to the police chief and said, we have to do something about it, and we need to do something big. What happened was the chief approved a plan to do a sting operation in Long Beach. This only happened once, and it was huge. Lieutenant Woods was in charge of it. I was called in as an advisor because I was officially the gay and lesbian representative of the community and worked directly with the police department. One thing we needed from the police department were decoys. These are police officers that might be considered gay. And I was asked to pick some out, like I had some, magical talent to do that. They have to be young, probably early 20s. They have to be small built because they would make the better targets. And I even talked to them when they were selected. I talked to them about how to be gay or act gay. And it was really sort of silly, but the stereotypes worked in this case, to walk a certain way. And I even talked to the group of officers in general. There was probably about 20 officers involved in the sting operation. It was a big deal. And I made some jokes, and I was saying, gay people, they walk like John Wayne needing to take a crap, and talked about where you keep your keys on your belt and what that meant. That the right side meant you were passive, and the left side meant you were a top. And one officer yelled out, "Hey, Jack, you wear your keys on your right. Does that mean you're a bottom?" And I said, "No, I'm just right-handed." So it was important that the officers trusted me because I was directing part of this and advising them on what to do. So what we did is we had the two decoys, and we had the other officers operating first in front of Ripples, which is a bar disco in Long Beach that sadly closed just a few years ago. The modus operandi of gay bashers was to go to a gay bar late at night before it was closing or when it was closing and follow people outside the bar leaving. It was a gay area, so people would walk to and from the bar. And these gay bashers would follow people leaving the bar, especially if they looked a little drunk, intoxicated, and then beat the hell out of them. Now, in that meeting, they were talking about the operation, and certain parts of it were secret. Like the surveillance van we used was not to be described in anything that I wrote about. In fact, I described it very differently, like a beat-up green van or something, when actually the surveillance van, called the box, was actually a rather spiffy-looking van, very high-tech. And inside the van, there was the old reel-to-reel tape recorders. There was a guy doing video from different windows in the van. There was another guy, with a headset on, listening to everything that they can hear. All of the officers that were there were undercover, and they were spread out in the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west of the bar. Probably about a half a block. And they called these eyes. These were the eyes. Their names were Victor 1, Victor 2, Victor 3, Victor 4. And the communication was between the box where I was and these different eyes, and also the decoys. The decoys, one of them, and now I told them how to dress, to wear tennis shoes, faded jeans, white t-shirt, to look gay. And I'll tell you, they were very cute. I picked out the right ones. So one of the decoys were called footballs. And there was a blonde football and a brown football. That's the names, that's the way all these codes worked, and all the chatter on the radio that I could hear because I was right there in the van. So one of them carried a fanny pack with a gun, and the other one had sort of a fanny pack where he carried the wire that would pick up the communications around him, and then we in the van could hear it, and the other eyes could hear what was going on in the immediate area of the decoys. So we were all set up. And so the decoys would be walking to the bar. They'd just be strolling, and walking together. They'd go in the bar, they'd come out of the bar. And I said to the lieutenant who was right beside me, I said, they don't look vulnerable enough. They need to be separated. So he had the decoys move separately. One went one direction, one went the other, and all the eyes were covering because, it's really weird to say this, these two young men, the decoys, were the most vulnerable and the most protected at the same time. The idea was to catch a would-be gay basher in the act of trying to punch one of them. And we caught some good stuff on camera, sadly, where they were being attacked or yelled at or screamed at. No one was going to let them get punched. And they could defend themselves. I mean, they weren't drunk or anything, of course, and they were police officers. So people would push them, hey, faggot, get out of my way, this or that. Cars would drive by, we're going to shoot you, faggots. If one of those guys pulled out a knife and just stabbed somebody, could happen just that quick. Victor 1 was in charge of roving, and he pursued the car that was yelling these threats. I don't know what happened to that. But anybody that was any kind of an assailant or would-be assailant, they were at least detained to keep them away from the Ripples bar so they can continue the operation. Now, one thing, when we were discussing this in the group of these 20 officers about how this would go, one of the officers mentioned, "What's Vladimir going to do?" And everybody in the room laughed. It was an inside joke. I don't know who Vladimir was. Was it a dog? I don't know. And so I just didn't ask. But something was funny about Vladimir. So we moved our operation to a bar called the Mine Shaft, which is still there in Long Beach on Broadway. And that's probably the gayest area of Long Beach. When we arrived at the mine shaft, there was a drunk in the gutter. And he was right in front, and the light was shining on him. He was right in front of the bar, in the gutter, and he was just sort of moaning, and he's sort of wobbling, like that, And these two guys came out of the bar, and they were just talking back and forth, like good friends. And the drunk was in the gutter, laying down. He had old clothes on. He was filthy. And he reached over, and there was a piece of bread that was in the gutter. And it probably was some hors d'oeuvres that the bar was serving, like mini sandwiches or something like that. And the drunk reaches over and eats it. And the two guys, two little cutie pies, they come out they see him do that. They put their hands on him. Oh, that's gross. It was so funny. When I heard the two guys say, oh, that's gross, it dawned on me that I can hear their conversation. The drunk had a microphone picking up the sounds all around him. He was Vladimir. He was positioned as a drunk in front of the door because the lieutenant felt we need a gun right there in case something bad happens. Apparently, every time they did some kind of a stakeout or some kind of a sting, he always came up with something different to wear and he wouldn't tell anybody. He'd just show up on the job like he was, and he would just do his character. And it was funny, and I really enjoyed meeting him later. Then the next bar we went to a few bars, but one of them was a straight bar. It's not one that I picked out. I picked out like 4 of the gay bars that I thought would have the most action and be the busiest. And so the decoys came out and they walked around separately. And I said to the lieutenant, because I'm just watching on the screen in the van, in the box, watching everything that's going on. And I said, this isn't going to do any good. They look like 2 straight people walking around a straight bar. I mean, what's the point? I said, you got to have them hold hands. That was when you tell police officers to hold hands, look out. They're all macho types. But Lieutenant Woods said, okay, footballs, hold hands. And they held hands, walking around the bar and all this. Nothing happened. I didn't suspect anything would happen at a straight bar. I don't know who picked it or why they picked it. I have no idea. At the end of the evening, they all went out to a pizza place for a late night dinner or snack, and I was invited to go. And they were pleading with him, saying, Lieutenant, the video has to be destroyed. And the lieutenant says, don't worry about it, Well, you have to imagine these 2 young officers, probably early 20s, they're on film holding hands, walking in the street. And this would be very embarrassing if somebody had a copy of that, and they showed it or they put it, there was no internet then, but, if they distributed it somehow, it would be really embarrassing. But it never came out, and that was fine, because all this film and audio and everything was all part of the evidence of what was happening. Now, we never caught like somebody really giving a sucker punch to somebody, but some really big things happened, and I'm very proud of those things. One is that the police department got to experience what it was like walking in front of a gay bar at night and how dangerous that could be. That helped them understand because that went out to the whole staff, the rank and file, and they put out the word. The other thing that happened, when I was in the pizza place, I was on the other side of me was a police officer. I didn't know who he was. He says, Jack, it's too bad the gay community is never going to see this, that this was just a private police operation, and, nobody's going to know. I looked at him. I said, they're going to know. And I wrote articles in a lot of the papers about the sting operation. And that made the gay community feel that the police department was interested in crimes against them. It was shortly after that, I was invited to be an instructor of the Long Beach Police Academy. I was a volunteer, and I would talk to these new officers, these new recruits for like one day. I got them for one day, and we can talk about whatever we want to talk about, and that was really good. I had a lot of respect from the Long Beach Police Department, both the command staff and the rank and file. And I'm really proud of what we did. I would say that Chief Binkley, who was brought in to clean up the Long Beach Police Department and who fired or attempted to fire 83 officers, really did a good job of cleaning up the police department. And it just made an about face. And I would talk to, when people called up to report a crime, I would say, well, when you called the police, how did the police react? Well, they treated me with a lot of respect. I got that more and more and more. And then I would write letters to the chief, and I would say, on this certain date, this person was assaulted coming out of the mine shaft or wherever it was. And the officers treated him with a lot of respect. They took a report, and I just want to, commend them on doing their job well done. I did that frequently. And when officers did the wrong thing, I'd send a letter to the police chief and say, certain date, this guy was accosted, the police would not take a report. Would you look and see who went on that call? Because those are all recorded, and the chief would know who refused to take a report. It got so interesting that when I went in to see the chief on one occasion, on the wall that was outside of his office were all my letters, not the negative ones, criticizing people, that's not fair, but all the ones where I was praising different officers. And it was just really a neat experience. And I really owe it a lot to Chief Binkley. And we were very successful in stopping perpetrators. And the last thing I'd like to say is that even though this event happened a long time ago, hate crime happens today. If you have been a victim of a hate crime, please share it with us below. Thank you for watching.